So I'd like to talk for a few moments about Chapter 5 in mindfulness, and in particular the practice you learn that just is mind. In a book on mindfulness, one might think that it would begin with a chapter on mindfulness, but it isn't until Chapter 5 that we actually explore mindfulness directly. Now, why is that? Well, Chapter 1 is leadership or self-leadership, meaning if we're going to be engaging in anything deliberately and intentionally, but certainly practicing mindfulness, something new, it'll call for a certain amount of self-leadership. And inevitably, most people realize that that's true. They're going to have to lead themselves to the cushion, lead themselves to the chair, and follow their own instruction. In time, it might become more natural, more seemingly effortless, and the like, but for many at first, it takes a little bit to get to your seat. Chapter 1 zeroed in on attention, and we learned our first mindfulness exercise, the focused attention practice. That's Chapter 2. The focusing of attention on an object like the breath, and when one realizes that their mind has wandered, bringing attention back to the breath. It's a practice. It has a specific instruction. In Chapter 3, relaxation, we learned about breathing practices and something adjacent to mindfulness practice, but overlapping, which is to take slower, deeper breaths as one means to feel more relaxed and calm, separate and apart from, a focused attention practice, or, as is also learned in Chapter 3, the body scan, another practice similar to focused attention in that we're focusing attention on an object, but the object is moving as we scan through the body to different parts of the body, noticing the sensations that are arising there, and when the mind wanders and we realize it, bringing attention back. That's Chapter 3. Two practices that we've learned, focused attention and body scan. In Chapter 4, awareness, we learned the third primary practice, open monitoring. And here we have a little bit of a departure. Rather than having an object of attention that we're placing our attention on, whether it's fixed like the sensations of the breath, or moving like scanning through the body, here we don't have an object of attention as much as we are open and receptive to whatever it is that arises as we watch it come and go, like a witness. And the practice begins with a little bit of grounding and settling into the body, into the breath, and then shortly thereafter, after sort of creating hopefully a useful sense of the body as a mountain, a metaphor for that steadiness and that stability, then leaves us to be present for our experience, noticing how things come and go, and if we should get pulled away, to turn attention to the breath, to steady ourselves, and or to simply reopen to that larger expanse of, noticing what comes and goes. In many ways, the first two practices, focused attention and body scan, are a preparatory, we could say, for open monitoring, because if our attention is scattered and shaky, then it's going to be harder to hold that open, receptive state, because anything that comes along may very well just grab our attention. At the same time, the focused attention and body scan practices are primary practices that can serve you well for the rest of your life. So it's not like the open monitoring is a better practice, but it is getting us a little closer to the next chapter, Chapter 5. So we have three primary practices that we've been learning and practicing, and they're all really helping us do something very similar, which is stay present, and when we realize that we're not, to return and reestablish a more present-oriented way of being in relationship to the moment. And the Chapter 2 instruction on the relaxation practice is meant to be a reminder that separate and apart from being more present for our experience, which sometimes will be not the most pleasant thing, we can do things to deliberately achieve a more relaxed and calm state. And in time, we explore how it can work together with a mindfulness practice. In Chapter 5, mindfulness, we explore mindfulness more directly. The practice, however, is not the focused attention, the body scan, or the open monitoring practice. It's known as just is mind. In the law, we could say if we want to bring about justice, it's important to see the world as it just is. So this is a practice that can be confusing in ways, because what's the instruction? Sit and be present for your experience. Is that an instruction? Is that something to do? Be present for our experience? Yes, I think on the one hand we can say I am not reading, I'm not chatting, I'm not getting up and walking around, and getting something to eat. I am staying in my seat, though you could be standing or you could be walking, of course, and I'm going to be present for my experience. I'm going to set the alarm for 6 minutes or 12 minutes or 18 minutes, and I'm going to be present for my experience. Now, this is where self-leadership comes back in, because we're not necessarily being guided in any particular way. There's no instruction really beyond be present for your experience. Now, this is where I think it gets interesting, and this is where the first three practices that we learn can be helpful. Well, if you're sitting there saying, oh, that's all I got to do, just sit and be present for my experience, well, sooner or later, and usually it's a lot sooner than later, we begin to, get antsy, we begin to think about things, and this is where the practices that we've been doing have been in some ways preparation for this ultimate practice of being present for our experience. And we could have it where when we are just sitting, being present for our experience, it's not a practice at all, we're just being present. So we can do the just as mind by saying, oh, I'm now going to do my practice, being present for my experience, and at the same time, like a vase with two faces, it's being present for our experience and it's not a practice. So I'll leave it at that so that it doesn't become conceptually thick. This is an experientially rich practice, and it's one that you've worked your way towards in many ways with the practicing you've been doing. And as you continue to practice the primary practices, this being present for our experience will become increasingly available to you. And of course, we could have begun at the very beginning of the book by saying mindfulness is being present for our experience. So sit and be present for your experience, or be in class and be present for your experience, or be in this conversation with somebody and be present for your experience. But what happens? The mind begins to wander. We don't realize it. Agitation in the body begins to get the mind going and feelings arising, and then we become a little bit caught in our experience. Emotions begin to pick up, and we're not so steady emotionally. And so what do we do with that? Oh, well, focused attention practice is helpful. Body scan is helpful. Open monitoring is helpful. And so in many ways, the simplicity and the doing nothing essence of mindfulness and being mindfully aware comes together in chapter 5 with the just as mind practice. I hope you find this helpful. Wishing you well.